Hey everyone, today is June 5th and welcome to Esports Weekly. My name is Gormizer and today we have a pretty interesting show for you. Of course, we're going to be looking at the console league, the minor league. Now everything is done and dusted with those leagues. We can look at the teams that are confirmed going to MSI, break down what exactly we expect from them. Of course, look at this last week and kind of go into that, what we expect to see from them, well, in about a month when they finally get here for LAN. Going to the PPL this week's going to be a very, very big week. Maybe not as much in terms of impact, but just in terms of sheer number of matches. And of course, being able to look at last week. We also have an interview with Hero from the Renegades, which I'm excited for, because last week they kind of blew everyone away with that. And that's the one I think that's going to be very interesting to look at. That team as a whole is interesting to look at right now. But the teams that matter most right now, and the teams that are going to be incredibly important, are those that have qualified from the console league, from the minor league. They're going to MSI, and kind of looking at what they're going to do. Again, they have a little less than a month overall. I believe it starts the 30th this month. So what are they going to do? And all this downtime is kind of the big question that's going to be up on their mind. And a lot of it's going to be, well, much of the same. They're going to wake up, they're going to grind, they're going to scrim, and they're going to keep on going. But the biggest thing, I think, for a lot of them is that they have a couple more weeks of Premier League play that is going to be on LAN here that they can kind of watch to get a feel for what exactly the Premier League team is going to be looking for, because they can't start dropping anything just yet. They have to keep their performance up at that top level. They aren't, like, I think other than NIP, really, everyone is, mostly confirmed for MSI, but not going to quite fully, I think, grasp the same meta from, well, last week to a month from now. Either way, it's been very interesting to see them coming through. Because of this, I think they're going to end up paying a lot more attention to drafting styles, play styles. Any team that you could go up against, you're going to want any amount of footage you can go for. And of course, I believe they're going to be trying to scrim each other as much as possible, if not even more than possible. And you could see, just based on what we saw last week, things are getting shaken up. And I believe console league, minor league teams will be able to do so. Renegades are another team that might fall in that vein. They are still at the bottom, but they are one of the teams. That 1-10 is very misleading after last week. Even though last week, I believe, was 4 O's, 4 1s, whatever for them, it's still incredibly misleading because of the fact that they just looked so phenomenal. And I'm actually really excited, again, to talk to Hero later to see what is going on with them, because it just seemed like such a weird instance for them to come in and bring NIP to the brink of, not necessarily defeat, considering it was still a 4-0, but long 4-3s, 20-minute plus games that were always kind of toppling them. Virtus.pro, I think, had a little bit of an easier time, but it seemed like there might have been some tilting going on from the team. And admittedly, after the set they had against NIP, I feel like it'd be hard not to tilt. It was a very interesting week just because of that. And again, looking at all of that, we kind of get a glimpse at some of these teams that have been a little shaky, have had some on and off days, and I think what the players have said the most in every single interview I've had with them, and the thing that has kind of solidified in my mind now, is that it really does just depend on who shows up that day. That's who's going to win. If it's Virtus.pro, then Virtus.pro can win. If it's Renegades, Renegades can win. There was one distinct moment, actually, in the Virtus.pro set up against Renegades that was kind of the breaking point. It was just one small misplay from Moonchopper, but you could see the impact it had. It lost the game, and because of that, Virtus.pro ended up just winning 2, 3, and 4, almost like it's nothing. It gets a little easier for them every single time. But the biggest thing from Virtus.pro is the fact that they were keeping up more with Envy. They were kind of able to come in and handle Renegades, I guess is the best way to word it. They saw how good they looked on Thursday, and they just kind of popped them in a cage, pushed them to the side, made sure that they kept themselves ahead. It was still pretty close overall as a set, but it was one of those things that they are looking much more like their old selves, kind of being able to keep themselves reinvigorated, keep themselves up there with the likes of Envy and Renegades. And I'm excited to see, because I believe the last match that we actually have for this week will be them going up against Space Station again. And last time that went 7 games, and it was incredibly fun. This time, it could probably go 7 games and be incredibly fun. I think that one's going to be a fantastic set. But again, looking at what we've seen from these last week, Renegades were able to shake some things up. And one of the things they shook up was just NIP as a whole. And the question is whether or not, did Renegades look really good? Did NIP look a little shaky? I think it's a little bit of both. I think NIP, after a couple of weeks off, weren't quite prepared for the changes that have happened with the minor league. Of course, the different style of play that Renegades brought in and were able to bring to them. Again, it was a bunch of 4-3s, but they closed it out 4-0 every single time. And then the second match, the next time they played, well, they played Envy, and guess what Envy did? They did the impossible. They beat NIP, and that was the thing that I think kind of blew everyone's mind, right? Renegades are looking good. NIP is getting a loss. Like, what is going on with week number 10? And the answer really just comes down to the fact that I think Envy have found their footing. They've kind of planted their feet in the ground, and they're ready to push back. There was a lot that went right for them, and maybe a lot that went wrong for NIP in their set, but to be able to come through, look really solid against Virtus.pro after a pretty tough loss at the very beginning. I mean, Bazaar was the first map it started on, the first map for the week, and it was almost wildly in favor, or I mean, well, towards the end of Virtus.pro, and then Envy just fight back 4-1, and then the next day they do the exact same thing. They find a 4-1. NIP versus Envy was probably one of the best sets that we could have seen, but not for the reason that you have other best sets. Like a 7-game set's really fun because it goes the entire distance. You get to see, like, you never know who's going to win, and then it comes down to potentially a 3-3 point fight at the very, very end to decide this team. This was interesting for a different reason. It was that NIP kind of looked like a ghost of themselves. They didn't look like the team that we had seen that was undefeated, the team that we had seen that had gotten themselves this 30-win streak. They had one map on Jag Falls that kind of stood out as okay, this is their moment. This was the one that really stood out as they are still existing, but it kind of felt like a shell that came through. I'm excited to see what they can do to adapt to try and play for these next few weeks, because it is going to be incredibly challenging for them. Of course, they're so far ahead that it doesn't matter, but you definitely want to be able to go into the MSI feeling confident about yourself, not just being first seed, but knowing that you could potentially keep that. Either way, it's going to be an interesting one. We're going to be able to look at this week's PPL a little bit later, but before we get to that, we're going to take a quick break and then come back with the Console League. Welcome back, everyone, as we are going to be able to get into the Console League. And, of course, to do that, I have to bring someone onto the desk with me. And so I grab our, console correspondent, Dave Olson.
Oh, it's me.
You never would have guessed.
Who else would it be, Gore? At this point, you never would have guessed. It is me, though. We are going to talk a little bit about the Console League today, though. Very excited, though. I mean, now we are officially done.
Officially done.
All 4 teams are locked into MSI. Granted, 3 of them were locked in pretty long ago. But actually, last week, it really did come down to one final game. If low-key scheming were to have taken, a map or two off of heating up last week, things could have got interesting.
And I think that's kind of the interesting thing. This last week, we kind of looked through, and again, like you said, 3 of the 4 teams were solidified. Heating Up and Onslaught were kind of the only big question mark that we had coming through. But being able to, look at the standings from what we've seen. Elevate were able to finish undefeated, not even dropping a single map the entire time, which I think is the important thing for them. And they are arguably one of the strongest teams that we've seen on console, just in general.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk about that here in a minute with rankings, kind of ranking the teams that are coming out of this. But yes, I think they are the strongest team coming out of the Console League. They are truly undefeated. They're playing pretty much flawless up to this point. They have, a team, Trensic, Shu, Exodia, Emmett Payne, wonderful. I mean, when you have a team like that who are all firing on all cylinders at any given week and playing as clean Paladins as they are, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah.
They proved to be impossible to beat in the Console League up to this point. So I think they're my team that takes kind of that top slot going into MSI. And
so being able to look towards them, and I guess like the competition they're going to have, because one of the things about MSI is that it is going to introduce crossplay for a lot of these teams.
Yep.
That's where, Elevate comes into the fact that we've heard them scrimming PPL teams. We've heard them scrimming PML teams, like constantly trying to get that experience against those likes on PC. And I haven't quite heard the same from some of the other teams, specifically Cyclone, who is in this shaky area of they were first place, undefeated.
Yeah.
But they did lose quite a few maps throughout their split, and you could argue that maybe there were teams that were closer overall in their region, but also that some of it does come down to them slipping up.
Yeah, I mean, quite a few is it's an overstatement maybe when it comes to really how many games they played. I mean, in total they lost 4 maps. But the problem is that's exactly right. You have to then compare it to the way the other teams performed in their split up to this point. And Cyclone are a very strong team. Of course, they 12-0. I mean, I look less at that 32. I mean, granted, that shows maybe a little bit of nitpickiness, because I mean, when you really try to get down to brass tacks with these teams, that's kind of where you have to look. I mean, you have 3 12-0 teams, so when you have one that's dropped 4 more maps than the rest, that's kind of what you have to look at. But still a very strong team, of course, having some fun in their games this week, flexing onto some different roles. It was definitely fun to see. Spirits are definitely high with Cyclone. Excited to meet some of those guys as they come here in a few weeks.
And I think I'm excited too. And now we can look at the one region that we had no clue what was going to come out. It was kind of separated, by one map overall. And I believe that was kind of the gist coming into this week was if there is a very specific scenario, it could swap who goes to LAN. And it relied on one team losing a couple of maps. And, when you're number 1, it's kind of hard to lose to the number 3 or number 4.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you'll see here in the standings, of course, a 1-map difference, and that's tough. I mean, obviously for Onslaught, and the 2 losses for both of these 2 teams throughout the entire split were to each other, and both of them had a 3-0 against one another. I think both of them had, 3-1, 3-2 against one another. So, it truly came down to 1 map, 2 maps that they maybe dropped to one another throughout the entire split, and it's tough because I think both of them deserve to go to MSI, and both of them could have gone to MSI and could have performed well against a lot of these teams. But it is heating up at the end of the day who find the win. I think low-key scheming needed to take a map off of them to force a tiebreaker, but I wasn't sure that was going to happen. Didn't happen. They 3-0'd.
And even if it does happen, you have to wonder who comes out on top.
Right, but actually, honestly, Onslaught had been winning the past couple of matchups between these two. They won the most recent one 3-2, so if it went to a tiebreaker, things could have been interesting.
Never know. But now we can look at the last team that is going to MSI, their last week, how it went, and surprise, surprise, Flashpoint 3-0'd. Flashpoint were... no, they didn't.
That's right.
I was so ready to say they 3-0'd in my brain, and then I remembered how the set actually went. Stush did it again. I forgot about this. This makes me happy.
I love. I mean, at the end of the day, I bring it up because I love memeing the Flashpoint guys. I mean, when we bring it up, it's 100% just a meme at this point because it's like they lost 2 maps the entire split. They're both the Stush, and I mean, again, that's another team who is having some fun, kind of going into this split, and if you look at the rankings overall, we kind of touched on it, so I imagine. Not much of this may come as a surprise. Number 4 team is heating up, and these are all very close. I mean, it's not like there's a massive gap sort of in my eyes, but I say heating up just because they had a slightly more contended schedule. Granted, Onslaught I think are better than the other 2 teams in these other regions. Heating up have a great roster and deserve to be going to MSI. I think some of the other teams are just slightly cleaner, which is why I put them at 4. But I mean, it's very close. I want to precursor this. It's all very close in my eyes, but I had to put somebody at 4th.
Somewhat, I guess if you have 4 teams, only one can sit down at the bottom. But then that means, I guess, I can probably guess your number 3 based off of that. And I'm going to have to assume it's Cyclone because those 2 would come in pretty much equal for me right now.
I agree. And again, that's kind of how close it is. Cyclone is 3 in my eyes.
Makes sense.
And again, we're kind of splitting hairs here, but honestly, the way the rankings looked for these teams at the end of it is sort of what I go off of because they're all playing clean. They all have great rosters. Slapidopoulos playing out of his mind right now. He's a huge key on the Cyclone team. They dropped 4 maps throughout the split, which is definitely splitting hairs. But they dropped 4 maps compared to the teams we have 2, which of course would leave Flashpoint in this case. Granted that we know that Elevate is number 1. Flashpoint is my number 2 team coming into it. I like to meme them. They did drop 2 maps to Stush, but similarly to how I think Heating Up and Cyclone are close, kind of at 3 and 4, not very far behind 2 and 1. But I think Flashpoint and Elevate are very close at 2 and 1. But at the end of the day, Gore, you have to give first place to the team who not only went 12-0, but did not drop a single map. And I would wager that a lot of those maps were 4-0s or 4-1s within there. Trenzik, Shu, Exodia, Emmett Payne, as I said, wonderful, of course. I mean, this team is stacked. They're firing on all cylinders. They're my number one team coming out of this, but all four are really close. I'm excited to see how they perform.
I'm excited to see Elevate, specifically when it comes to MSI, and I'm assuming you're kind of feeling the same way.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to throw you on the spot because this is something I've been saying for a couple weeks. I just want to know, do you think Elevate has what it takes to not only tackle down some of the PC teams, but to potentially move pretty far in the bracket?
I think they will hold their own against minor league teams, maybe even taking the win against some minor league teams. The PPL teams, I mean, they play on another level.
Yeah, that's true.
But you have to remember, we're getting the top 6 PPL teams that not even the other PPL teams could beat. So I think they'll move in the bracket. But those PPL teams, that's a wall that I don't even know if the minor league teams will make it through.
That's going to be interesting to see. Well, that's going to do it for the console league. I'm excited to see them. I like the power rankings. I like what we have. Thank you, Dave, for coming on and talking about that one, because that is pretty much it. The console league is done, tied up with a nice little pretty bow as it came through. And there was one other league we had this week that ended. And that was the minor league. And we're going to go and dive into the meat and potatoes of that one right after this.
Amani arrives to claim your kingdom, your home. There is no mercy in her eyes.
Androxus uses Nether Step, avoiding the Mad Warder.
Knights of old, give me strength.
Maldamba conjures a gourd, providing salvation for his party.
Ready your weapons, soldiers! Ready your graves.
Barrack places his turret to defend his allies.
A good fight, a good fight. I want another.
Well played. Amani transforms into a dragon and burns the city.
Shall we play with flames first today? Or perhaps frost?
Critical hit.
What? My turrets took down the last dragon, no problem.
I should have rolled my naval for you to play.
It's just a lot of character for Amani.
I don't know, I like the ending.
Welcome back, everyone, as we come through. I didn't like the way my jacket looked, so I took it off. Either way, we're going to be jumping into the minor league now, and I bring in a very close to call.
Plus, your shirt has a great message on it.
It has a great message on it. People like people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, they do. And I like the minor league, which is why I'm here to talk about it.
There we go. Being able to come in. This week was pretty lackluster, I guess. The last 3/4 of it was pretty much what you would have expected. Like Penta did really well, Sangwa did really well, and now the new hype unit did really well. Well, new as in new sponsor, not new team.
We had a little treat in North America as the standings were not necessarily locked in, but overall, I think some big storylines in Europe, despite them being basically locked in and locked down for the MSI. All business. I came out, and you and I were sitting in the green room watching Evan and Dave cast this one. And we, look down at your phone, you look up, wow, all business got a point. Nice. They're going on the offense here. And then they got a game. And then they got 2 games. And Gore and I were just like, oh my God, are they about to take this set over Sour Team? I mean, this is wild. This is that 3rd place team. And yes, they've been on the upswing, but Sour Team, this is Sheepa, Perdo, Ninu, Zarini. I mean, Jalpi, this is the squad. These are the boys, 2nd place in Europe. They were dominant at the very early onset of this European phase, and that's why it was so wild to us that this might actually come to fruition here. All business might actually take down Sour Team, but then it was just that reverse sweep.
Yep, and that's kind of where things broke apart, where we got to game 3 and we're like, they're down 2-0. I don't think I've seen All Business up 2-0 on anybody other than Blazing Asars this entire split.
Pretty much.
So having them come in and just 2 games off of it, you could argue, I guess, both sides. All Business were playing really, really well. And Sour Team has been in this position, I think, very similar to what we saw out of Penta, what we saw out of most of the top teams, where it's just cool, we're going to try some things out and just see how they go. We're going to throw a Sky at the wall, see if she sticks.
Exactly. You might see this down the stretch of minor league phases and console league phases. When you have a 13-week phase and we're only taking the top 1 or top 2 teams, the sooner these teams get mathematically locked down, that's where you might start to see people do a little bit wonkier stuff. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened here with Sour Team, but you want to maybe polish up a new strategy, try something completely different, or you're just overconfident. You know, hubris is a thing as well. Sour Team might be a little bit guilty of that one after yesterday, but they did manage to put their foot down. Like I said, reverse sweep, get the victory in that set. It's going to hurt their map differential a little bit, but that's all right because, like I said, they are mathematically locked in to that second spot.
Yeah, they were pretty much set from the get-go for this
like
one. I don't think there was literally any way for them to come through and take that away. But it was actually interesting. I think Zarini stood out to me a lot towards the end, just because like it did shift from this like all business doing really well to, oh man, like Zarini is just kind of bodying people. Like he's just running through and is just like, I am not going to lose today. And so it was an interesting day for Europe.
For Europe, yeah.
For North America, it kind of fell on its face in my eyes. Like I feel like it could have been a lot more.
It could have been.
And then it didn't.
And that's why you came to watch it. North America could have been interesting. As you can see, 1 and 2, Sanguine and Hype Unit, both 10 wins, 2 losses. However, the map differential was great going into that day. It was a 4-game situation. So even if the teams remained tied, the map differential was already, wide enough to where it wasn't going to matter if both teams won. Sanguine had to lose for Hype Unit to be able to overcome them. But that's kind of like why you wanted to show up and watch the day, where you don't necessarily have this happen a lot of time. I've cast a lot of Paladins, a lot of global series, a lot of these open qualifier long sort of stints. Most all of the time, you have like these mathematical lock-ins, or you know what your seedings and standings are going to be by 70% of the way through, 80% of the way through. It was pretty rare to see the North American Minor League, and to be fair, they've always been a pretty damn competitive region in their Tier 2 scene. It was cool to see them come through and have a potential upset or potential standing swing. The only thing that could have made it even better if it was Hype Unit versus Sanguine in that final week. They played their final matchup the week prior, so it wasn't necessarily all in Hype Unit's hands. They had to win their game, and just sort of fingers crossed that Sanguine lost theirs, but neither team came close to losing.
I mean, it would have been interesting. I think the biggest downside really was the fact that, actually neither of the teams, Bork had a sub, and being able to come in not with their full roster that had actually been doing pretty decently overall, like taking maps off of Hype Unit and Sanguine. Like if they come in full roster and they have potential to play upset for somebody, that would have been interesting. But I think it was like coming in, Apache played really well, but is not long shot, and I think that's kind of where it fell down to, is the fact that Bork just didn't have the 5 men that they are used to having, and because of that, they just weren't able to hit the same kind of checkpoints they always do.
Yeah, but I've said this a couple of times, and I just want to hammer the point home that I'm pretty proud of the minor league teams and the way they've conducted themselves. A lot of them have made very forward-thinking thoughts, like, realizing they're probably done for this phase and started to make roster changes, role swaps, whatever it was to get them prepared for the next phase. But definitely tip my hat to all the teams that participated in the minor leagues. You guys conducted yourselves phenomenally through this first phase. We couldn't have asked for anything better from you guys, and we're very proud of the way that you all played.
And I love that we got to end it on kind of a fun note overall. I think it was just like a fun day yesterday to be able to come through. The minor league's been looking awesome.
Definitely.
I'm excited to see these teams when they come to MSI, and I'm excited for Split 2 to get started up so I can see them all come back. Either way, it's going to be an interesting one. Thanks for coming in and talking to me about the minor league as we break things down. Now we can get into the Premier League talk. And to start this off, we're actually going to be bringing in a player from the Renegades Hero to come through for an interview. That's going to be right after this.
Hey everybody, my name is Nicholas Bayshore, otherwise known as Valence, and I'm here with a quick announcement for you guys. As you may have already seen on Mixer, we've introduced these new Ember skills with Mixer, and we've been working on these with them for a little while just to make a cool, unique skill for each of our Paladins Premier League teams. And now you can pop these off while you're watching your favorite teams play on broadcast to support your teams. To use one of our Paladins Premier League themed Ember skills, all you have to do is go to the top of the page on Mixer, and you'll see a Get Embers button. Once you've done that, picked up some Embers, you can then go to the skills panel right underneath the broadcast itself and fire off a couple skills to support your favorite team. Now the cool part about this, right, is you are actually supporting your favorite team. A portion of the proceeds spent for each Ember skill goes directly back to those organizations that you're supporting in the Premier League, while the other portion goes to support the prize pools for this year. But that's not all. For every Ember skill that you use while watching the Paladins Premier League and anything else on our broadcast, you're going to earn some bonus Mixer points to help you get to those epic Mixer Store rewards just a little bit faster.
Well, welcome back, everyone. The colors have changed, the logo has changed, and I am now here accompanied by Hero from the Renegades. And I'm really excited to have you here because last week, your team kind of blew everyone's mind. It was unfortunate that I think both sets end up, not being the wins that you could have gotten. But, I mean, taking NIP 4-3 maps, kind of shaking up Virtus.pro a little bit. Like, what was going on last week that made the team look so different?
Like Pautek said in the pregame interview, we made Moon the main drafter. We changed that up like 1 week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then for the NIP set, personally, I just felt like there was like nothing on the line. Like I just wanted to play Paladins. I wanted to hold W on Bittner. I just wanted to have fun, and like that really made me like play better, I think.
That's actually, I think, the biggest thing about that set. One of the things, like, you could look at everyone on the team and they were all playing really well, but like you in particular were just having games that were out of your mind good. Like you were making plays that we've seen Bittner like struggle to make, or Diggy on NIP like struggle to make at times. Like, yeah, and you were doing consistently across 3 maps. So was it really just like you just wanted to have fun, and so you were just playing Paladins?
Yeah, I was just playing Paladins, and also the Furia helped a lot. Like just being able to go with like extra speed. That's really fun.
That was actually, I think, the biggest thing. Like, you guys, again, you particularly, like, you don't mind going to the Fernando, as you can see in the Virtus.pro set, but, like, there was a lot of stuff, and I think it was more apparent in NIP that the team has the capabilities. Like, we've seen the drafting, we definitely saw the play, but it was almost always with Virtus.pro, you would get 3-1, you would find yourselves up, like, at match point or map point, and then you wouldn't be able to fully close it out. What was going wrong to close out those?
So I think probably like a mixture of nerves and like not thinking properly about the next point fight coming up. Like I know personally, I like started making bad like in our ults during the VP set. I was just trying to like force something because like it like feels so bad. Like it's happening again. Like I'm trying to do something and then it ends up being like the wrong play. So we just need to calm it down, keep thinking calmly, focus up on the point.
So you guys have been this team that, I mean, looking at it, you're 1-10, unfortunately. Like, this last week, I think, was kind of the eye-opener for everyone to realize that you are still, like, as we've been saying all split, like, you're still 5 really solid players. It was just kind of getting things locked down. And last week kind of showcased you can lock things down. So what are you looking, like, into the future, not only just these next matches for the next few weeks, but, like, into Split 2, into the future? Like, what is the goal for the team?
So I want to keep the morale up, even if we lose, like, to Knights, which is our, like, most winnable set coming up. I want to make sure like we're still like here, we're still like checked in, and I want to keep improving as a team and keep like making sure everyone's on the same page.
Do you think last week was like an eye opener, like you said, but like people are coming in like they have nothing to lose when it's against NIP? Like, do you think it's better to have that kind of mindset coming into, like you said, the Knights, like when it's one of the most winnable matchups you have?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially for my teammates and like us that like have a lot of like relationships with the Knights. Like we're really good friends and we like want to like prove that we're better than them, right?
Yeah.
So I need to like tell my teammates to like, remember it's just a game. We're here to play. It's any other team.
You treat it like it's nobody on the other side. You just happen to be in a pub game that is played on land for some reason.
Exactly.
But that has been, I mean, it was interesting. I loved watching you guys play last week. I have a strong feeling I'm going to love watching you play this week as well, because again, I kind of like felt like the awakening of the beast that came through. So thanks, man, for coming in for the interview. I was really, really happy to be able to come through and break that down. But hey, the Renegades are looking really good right now. Even though they are still at the bottom, I expect them to start climbing up, especially next split. But for the rest of this week and for all the matchups we're going to see, we're going to be bringing in Evan to talk about the Premier League, and we'll be right back right after this.
Hey everyone, Heroic Leap J Nash, Evil Mojo Alyssa, and Titan Isaiah here with some exciting news.
Crossplay and cross progression for Smite,
Paladins,
and Realm Royale is live.
Players on PC, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch can now play with and against each other.
And by linking your Xbox and Nintendo Switch accounts to a high-res account, you'll be able to enjoy all of your own content and account progress across 3 platforms.
Head over to my.highresstudios.com to link your accounts, and be sure to check out our crossplay and cross-progression FAQ at highresstudios.com/crossplay for more details. We'll continue to forge ahead
on the battleground
and in the realm.
And now we are back to what is the probably biggest portion of this and the biggest portion of the week, especially for this week as we go into the Premier League. And to join me on the desk for this one, it's none other than Evan Rain Day Rayner to help break down. I mean, if we're looking at last week, what was a phenomenal week because of the matches we got.
Sure.
If we're looking at this week, it's going to be a phenomenal week because of the sheer number of matches we have.
Yeah, there's a lot, Gore. It's kind of heavy lifting, you know what I mean? It's dirty bulking, essentially, in Paladins, which Dave says that he's doing. I don't know. Cake doesn't feel like any kind of a diet in my eyes. But that's just my opinion, okay? I may be wrong. The PPL, though, this week, there's just straight facts. It is going to be a good week for the PPL, and I'm excited to talk about it because, you know, it's getting a little tighter in that middle pack. Look at those losses in 3, 4, and 5, Gore. Everyone is essentially able to turn this around and take what could even be second place. Not as sincere, only with 3 losses, 7 wins. Virtus Pro and Space Station, a little more work to do. But, I mean, at the end of the day, man, there's going to be a lot that's decided from this week's play.
I think the biggest thing, if you've been watching and looking at or maybe if you've only been looking at the standings overall, the biggest thing that you should notice has changed is that there was one goose egg that was sitting there still.
Yeah.
That has finally changed from a 0 to a 1, and that I think was one of the biggest things last week. Was not only did Envy come in and take down NIP, but they did it in a pretty convincing manner.
I think NIP and Envy had a great showcase, and what it was this team that was on a historic rise again. And I'm talking about actually just historic rise for NIP, and you see a team that hasn't had an historic run in Envy being able to kind of have a down moment and recognize that they were down and get beaten, get kicked while they were down. And it was insult to injury what happened with them. And to really be able to go at this challenge and say, this is almost our redemption arc. This is how we, get kicked down in the second, essentially, kind of moment of a book, right, where there's a 3-part kind of character arc, and be able to go ahead and challenge the bad guy one more time at the end and come out victorious. NIP is not undefeated. I mean, I think that's a win for the league itself to say that there's still some competition here at the high end. But for Envy particularly, Gore, it just set them on such a good path heading into the MSI.
And I think that's the comfort right now, right? Is again, when you're looking at NIP,
ton of confidence.
Based on last week going into the MSI and being like, that's one of the weeks we had, you're getting a little shaky. It doesn't matter how solid in first place you are, you have to kind of look at where the performance is right before you actually get there.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling the next time we see them, they're going to kind of double down, break down,
I think so.
Maybe collapse on some people who didn't want to have that feeling ever happen to them.
I know. Who wants to be collapsed on? I mean, that just sounds like just a
it
bad time.
It sounds pretty devastating.
Sounds like a bad time. Any way you slice it, like literally or, in game.
And I think, I just got to talk to Hero, and it was like looking at last week.
Claps for Hero, by the way. What a great week from him.
An amazing couple of sets from him, from the team. And the thing that kind of stood out is, like, as unfortunate as it was that it's 4 zeros, they showed that they are a team that will take you down if you give them the opportunity. If you do not respect them, you will lose to them.
And that's why I'm so excited to see them this week, Gore. And the thing is, when you see, the way Renegades have played, it gives you hope just for everyone, even people who are on a down slump. Whether this is Paladins, where this is in life, there's not a team that people thought would underperform but continue to go beyond expectations and change people's minds than Renegades. Not quite there fully, but that may be part of what we've seen with the transition of there is a new map coming in, there is a new meta, there are new things to learn for these teams, and that's where I think a lot of this week is going to be centered around who can dominate that early.
And that was actually one of the fun things about last week was we literally started off the week on Bazaar, and it was just like, cool, new map, and we're diving immediately into it. And that's kind of been the big thing. If anyone played, if you played the test maps, it was the Thrones, I believe is what it was called in the test map queue. Of course, it's been out for a few weeks, so you've probably been able to get it just in your siege rotations. But it came through. Square point fight, they have different from what we normally have, where if you look at Ice Mines, you look at Serpent Beach, you kind of have 2 platforms that are looking at each other team to team. Now you have 2 platforms looking across each other, but they're perpendicular to the team bases. So how do you feel about the map? How exactly have you been enjoying it? Like the point fight, the pushes, everything.
A lot of the map, I think, Gore, is really about verticality and being able to master that, plus the choke points. The idea around this bizarre map being something that's difficult for people to grasp, I don't really buy, although they haven't had as much scrim time as they want. I think it's pretty clear that if you can dominate the skies, you have an inherent advantage because there's a huge skybox. There's a lot of wiggle room to play around, especially when you're creating space. I think Drogos could be coming back in a little bit more. I also think Leon is going to get favored a little bit more. I think people got a little bit worried about her after the nerfs, and now they're going to be able to take it to, I think, more of a comfortable place. And hopefully that means people are pulling Drogos and Leon, like we saw work really well in the PML yesterday.
I think that's going to be the interesting thing. Meta's shifted a little bit just because of some buffs here, some nerfs there, and of course with the new map, things have just been crazy. I think it was a lot at once to just throw at everyone.
It was a lot.
And so last week was like the first glimpse. I think this week is going to be okay, everyone's been grinding with it. Everyone's had this. Everyone's got some experience. And so they're going to come through. And that kind of brings into, I want to say, the point as of right now where every single game counts. Every map counts. Everything that can affect your score in any way will affect something down the road or immediately.
Yeah, I think there's stakes right now. There's high stakes for a lot of these teams, and like the 3-4-5 that we mentioned, even too, and not as Vincier with only one loss away from being essentially tied with 4 other teams, all in tight contention, all I think playing this week as well. Yeah, it should be all of them playing this week, having a chance to go at it. It's just going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be really, really exciting. Part of an analyst job is sometimes to try to set you up for what to expect, but sometimes you have weeks where you truly just cannot know the answer until these teams clash, especially when you throw Renegades in the mix, especially when you throw a hot Envy, but maybe not, still teams trying to get their momentum heading into MSI. It's just going to be a tight contest. I'm excited.
And, a lot of the things that we've been talking about has been, the immediate thing after the league, after this split. It's going to be MSI, but there's something afterward. Well, first off, there's going to be an entire other split right afterward. Another 13 weeks of play that these teams will be going through. But they're also all still playing for High-Res Expo, still playing for the World Championship. And I know tickets are available now if you want to go get those to be able to come watch these teams clash it on the big stage. You need to be able to do so because that is something that, I think is changing actually specifically for this year. One of the changes we've made is that there's no reset. There's no summer or spring, summer, fall, and when you come into fall, it's 0-0. Everyone's equal. It's you've got spring, you've got fall, and when you come into fall, whatever you did in spring is baggage. You're bringing it with you.
You're bringing your baggage with you, which is why some of these losses hurt even more, which is why some of these wins help even more. So no one should really feel out of the count right now. And obviously MSI in that tournament format, you're going to be able to play your way through. So teams just have to understand that if we can perform on the day, I don't care what ended up happening over the last 8 weeks. If we figured it out now, we're going to be able to perform and get that money, get that recognition, and obviously achieve what we want, which is success at the end of the day. A lot of the players, they've got salaries, they're taken care of in other ways. And I think a lot of it is that they want to prove that they can do this. And only a few players in this whole league have proven that over the course of 3 years. Could it be the time for a new group of guys to kind of make waves?
Well, that's going to be, I think, the big question MSI is going to be able to reveal to us. But now we're going to be able to look at what's going on for Week 11. First off, you did just see it on the screen. I'm going to reiterate this. Both days are not starting at 1 p.m. They're both going to start at 11 because we have 3 sets each day. So we're going to have a total of 6 sets coming on this week. This is going to be Thursday, Kanga, SSG, Renegades, Knights, and SSG Envy. As you can see, SSG having the, depending on how you want to look at it, unlucky or lucky feat of playing twice in a day. They're not back-to-back, so they won't be able to ride like momentum to momentum, but they will be able to play. And, well, then they have to do it again on Friday because they came into the league late. They play the Knights, Envy Renegades, and then Virtus Pro goes up against SSG. Again, there's so many sets this week, and a pretty considerable amount of them could go pretty long, actually. Like, they could be 4-0s up to 7 games.
Listen, I personally believe that this is going to be a week where everyone takes a game off of each other. I mean, I believe that this is not a week where we're going to see crazy sweeps. I think we're going to see each team win the better matchup that they have. And I think that when it comes down to it, a lot of these games are going to be very, very contested. I don't expect a lot of 4-0s. And starting out with, a team that I think can really dominate this week in the sense of being able to, lose a game here and there too. I think Kanga are actually pretty poised for that.
They're actually, again, one of the first teams that are going to be coming in tomorrow morning at 11. They're playing Space Station Gaming first. And they're taking down Virtus Pro, but they're losing some of the sets that they should win. Like, they go so back and forth. But right now they've been rising, and I think that's
They
kind of the
have
big
been.
thing for Kanga.
And I think when you get that confidence with Kanga, they're hard to stop.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is big transition for the team, big transition for Evil Eye, and our producer's throwing me off. I used to call him Evuli all the time, so now Evil Eye was always a transition. But I think the idea around them is that they're performance-based, and unlike other teams where obviously it's performance-based, you almost know what you're going to get. Kanga swings on the pendulum of high levels of success to low levels of where are they. And if they could just keep that simple and just say, guys, let's not get too far out of the comfort zone. Let's keep it in the pocket. Let's get good picks. Let's get Rhino on something. Let's get Evil Eye on some power picks. Let's get all of these members really comfortable. And I think Guerra is a big guy who has to start taking as much leadership as he had. I want to see him take more. He is the most veteran player on this team as far as, Doe and these guys. He's competed with these guys from NA. He's competed with guys from LATAM. He's competed with guys from Europe, and he's been able to get to the finals of nearly every major tournament that we've had. So that's going to be something that I think I need to see from him.
I think what we're seeing there overall is going to be the fact that SSG and Kanga, it's 3 versus 1. Of course, Pretty Hair always going towards Kanga, but I think the biggest thing is that for everybody who's gone SSG here, I would say it's kind of an on-the-fence thing where it's like SSG will probably win, probably win in 6, but those 2 games they lose, I think, are going to be very apparent to showcase how good Kanga really is underneath.
Yeah, and I think SSG have a good opportunity here, like I said, to win. I think Kanga does too, though. And I think, we're going off of what we've seen, what we know, and what we're anticipating based on paper. But I'm also trying to feed into the fact that SSG, if they're going to make a run, kind of need to make a strong run now.
Yeah.
And I think Kanga have that. They just kind of had a really good couple of weeks last time they played. Now, I still think they'll get some wins, but I don't know if it's going to come against SSG.
Well, they do have at this point, Kanga have not quite as rough a road as SSG do since they have 4 matches to play this week. But the team that has been going a little bit towards trying to make a run right now is Renegades. We were talking about them a little earlier.
Yeah.
And their literal first matchup is going to be up against the Knights, probably the one that, Hero had said it, it's the one that they are most likely to win if they're going to win one right now.
I'm going to surprise people.
This is the one that I think is kind of more on the fence after last week.
It is the one they're more likely to win on paper, I think. I just think this is the one that they're going to lose. And it's crazy to think that. It's weird, but my gut tells me that Pittsburgh are just tired of losing. And I think Cuss even mentioned it in a tweet. I think he said, I'm tired of losing. Renegades, there's no other team that has a culture of just barely winning, aside from Pittsburgh, than Renegades. They've almost made that their staple. And yes, they have been playing confidently, but Pittsburgh is basically a team that has been more veteran over the board, a little bit more winning in general, because the guys who were on Renegades and the guys who were on Pittsburgh both did not have a lot of success, aside from Cuss, really successful runs in the PPL. I honestly think that Pittsburgh is going to take this game from Renegades.
And when I filled this out, me and Dave are leaning Renegades, you and Pretty Hair are leaning Knights.
Yeah.
But based on what Hero said, I'm actually inclined to agree with you on that now, just because of the fact that the one thing he revealed was that when they played NIP, what I would argue was their best set last week.
Yes, it was.
They were just coming in to play Paladins. They didn't care who was on the other side.
Absolutely.
They didn't expect to win. They just wanted to play the game and have fun. And because there's more pressure to beat the Knights, I think that's where that's going to fall down. So 50-50 is probably a good one. But I would say based on what they've said themselves, maybe even look at the Knights to be able to come through and look at their second set the next day to potentially shake things up. But before we can get to Friday, we have to finish out Thursday. And the last match is going to be SSG, and it's going to be Envy. 2 big teams clashing against each other.
Well, I think Envy here are in a great position. I think they've started to figure out what they need to do for these top dogs, and I don't think SSG has played anywhere near as well as NIP. I clearly think Envy are coming into this week as the strongest team, and I think that they'll have a good time with SSG. There might be a few maps that go SSG's way, but I feel like now it's scary for the league. Envy have kind of figured out what they were doing wrong. They've kind of understood the meta a little bit more now, and once they took a hold of the meta last season, they just never let it go. They essentially had a slump, but they started out really strong, had a slump, and then ended extremely strong. So I'm very excited to say that this seems to be an Envy win from our eyes, but you never know.
I mean, we've talked about it, how just a small meta shift can favor some teams, hurt other teams. We've seen it happen in the past. We've seen Envy go from a number 2 team to a number 1 team very dominantly because of meta shifts. And it feels like we might be in that area once again, because last week, again, it looked really good for them. I'm excited to see that match because it's kind of still on the fence in my mind, but like you said, Envy have just been playing so consistently at this point and so consistently well that they kind of look like they should take it, which admittedly, when you have to play 4 matches going, I guess, 1 for 1 on the first day is not that bad, because then SSG start the next day off immediately going up against the Knights.
Right. I mean, it's a
gauntlet for them.
It's going to be a gauntlet, and you're going to have to go through that to get the end of the prize. I mean, there's a reason there's a dragon in between the adventurer and the princess, right? You have to conquer something in order to get what you're looking for and to get the payoff. And I think that that's where Envy have found themselves. They've had that dragon in between them in NIP and even SSG and even Virtus Pro and teams like that throughout this season. But they have been willing to take a few burns, a few bruises, and now it seems like they've slayed it. So I'm excited to see them continue on this route. If they drop games this week, I would be very surprised.
That's going to be, I think, the biggest thing coming into this. Knights are very, I mean, guess like you said, where they are on this fence of they're tired of losing. But also realistically looking at who they can beat right now, it's kind of Renegades on the list. They've shown like Kanga has been improving constantly. Knights have been improving, but you can still see those disconnects. And I want to say that they probably have some similar disconnects that the Renegades have, where it is very much coming through, I guess them trying to keep their performance up overall, especially depending on whether or not they beat Renegades or not. That could affect today. But of course, SSG are running the gauntlet, like we said. I mean, they will have played Kanga, break, I guess, technically a break for the next match. Then they play Envy, and then immediately they go from win or loss, which based on predictions, loss, into another match where they have to win. Do you think that's going to like shake up SSG?
Oh, 100%. But I actually think that even though they may lose, it might be better for SSG when they play more consecutively. I think these guys just coming into a new environment, it's different. It's always going to be different for native Brazilian players to be in America until they make this their firm home. And it's not. So the fact that they can get warm and comfortable, I really like that they'll actually take that secondary matchup and be better than they were in the first matchup. That's actually my anticipation. And we've seen it with Na'Vi when they were able to play all of those sets back to back to back. And Envy as well, going through the losers bracket in Vegas of last year. It seems to be the team that plays and continues to play kind of stays warm.
Win.
Almost a little advantage. Yeah, we've seen that.
And so it's been pretty big. And I mean, you could even look towards Nocturnes over a year ago, where it's just
That's
like,
cool.
they ran through that gauntlet, and it's the same thing. But again, they will have a small break technically where they aren't in the booth. And for Friday, that is going to be Envy and Renegades. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil the predictions. You've gone Renegades here, and based on the conversation we had earlier, I think I know why, but go ahead and flesh it out.
So I honestly believe that Renegades are going to step up the most against another big opponent, and an opponent that maybe they expect that they can just relax. I do anticipate they will lose against Pittsburgh, and I think that that's the game that they're susceptible in, because it's hard to focus on Pittsburgh knowing that you're playing Envy the next day. And I think that the way they performed against NIP, the way they've been performing against top teams, for whatever it is, they bring out, like, the spotlight kind of almost opens them up. And I think Envy will win before, and I think they will be confident, and I think the last thing they will expect is Renegades to give them a run for their money. Envy are very confident, and they should be. They're prepared. They're great players. They're world champions. I don't think they'll take it lightly, but I do feel that Renegades will give us a show, and I just would love to see them get a win over this week.
I think give us a show is probably the best term for it.
They got to close it out, but
they can come through and potentially do what they did with NIP, where it's just like you're drawn in, even though the scoreline could be 3-0. You're just like, this. How are they keeping this close? Like, how are they keeping up with this team?
Gore, there's just this idea, and in sports it's similar. If you're up by 5 goals, or if you're up by 30 points and you shoot a 3-pointer, not really a lot of pressure on you. And I think that same thing happens when you're playing against, LeBron James in one-on-one. If you feel like you just score a basket, you're like, yeah, dude, I scored on him. Like, there's no big deal, but that actually might open you up to play a little bit better, a little looser. And that's what I'm thinking. Envy's a giant right now. Renegades know it. They've never been in contest with this team as far as a league dynamic. Envy's always been way out ahead, but I think that's where Renegades may be able to shine. Just play loose and go at them.
Well, now we're moving into what is probably going to be one of the most contested sets of the week. Of course, I think Kanga SSG could do it, SSG and Envy could do it, but VP and SSG. Obviously, SSG seem to be the common factor through all of these, but that's going to be the last one we see. Last time it goes 7, VP pretty much barely eke out the win at the very end. So how do you feel about this one?
I think that this is going to be just a good match. I think it's going to be a good match, and I do hope that this goes 7 because I think that it's too often that we have good matches that end in 4-1s and we think, or 4-2s, and we think, oh, that wasn't as contested as I would have hoped.
Yeah.
But I think both these teams have given themselves the opportunities to lose a bit. Games maybe they even shouldn't have lost. With 4 losses in the column and with essentially competing for the exact same spot, this one is going to be down to the wire. And that's why I just feel like it's going to be hard to call, even though our predictions are what they are. It could go either way, man. It should be 50-50.
And I think that's kind of like, it's one of those things, our predictions, I think, actually have it a 75-25, but admittedly, again, 3 of those are flipping a coin and just saying, yeah, Virtus.pro won last time, and so maybe Virtus.pro win again, but, you know, looking again at the way things are going for the schedule for this week, it is SSG playing 4 separate matches. They're going to be warmed up. They're going to be used to the boost. They're going to be used to, at this point, I mean, that's going to be their 4th match, so you had to look at it in one of 2 ways. They're really used to where they're sitting, or they're really tired because they've had to go through 3 of them overall already. 2 of them happening on Thursday again, starting with Kanga, ending with Envy, with a Renegades Knights scuffle in the middle. And then Friday they're going to start with Knights, end with VP, with Envy and Renegades kind of being the scuffle in the middle.
Yeah, I think Renegades Pittsburgh will be a fun one, and I think Renegades Envy will be really fun as well. Virtus.pro SSG could give us either because, I mean, honestly, SSG could be so tired and just they could have lost a couple of times because there's some decent opponents they're playing, and they might just be defeated and deflated. Virtus.pro may stomp on them. But Virtus.pro, I like the thing that shifted me, Vex and his conversation around kind of taking time to prioritize the PPL. That's what gave me the edge. I think that they're going to come in full focus for this one.
Oh, man, thanks for coming in.
Thank
you.
The
Premier League is looking intense this week, to say the least. It's going to be 6 whole matches that we come through, and so I think you're just excited to watch what happens, as I am. But that's going to do it for the Premier League. That's going to do it for Esports Weekly today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have predictions that go against ours or with ours, you can tweet us at any point in time. We love the conversation. Either way, it is June 5th. It's a Wednesday. We're going to go record some interviews for this week. But until next time, we'll be seeing you.
See ya.